Hi, I'm Matthew Ward, and this is an exploration into the views of the South before and after living in Mississippi. The people I'm interviewing are Dr. Merv Matthews along with David and Lisa Ward. Dr. Merv Matthews was born and raised in the South Bronx of New York City. He lived there until he was 24 years old, where he then went to the University of Indiana in Bloomington. He moved to Oxford in August of last year. David and Lisa Ward were both born and raised in small towns in northeast Oklahoma. They later attended and graduated from Oklahoma State University before moving to Texas together. They lived there for 10 years before moving to Mississippi for the past 14. What follows is an inquiry into what these people believed before moving to the South, and how living in Mississippi has affected those beliefs.
I think the southern United States has a persona of being the North-South in the Civil War, and there being a large black population. There were not many blacks in the part of Oklahoma where I grew up.
You don't go to small towns in regions that had slavery at some point. When we were thinking of the South when we were back in New York, it wasn't so much thinking of New Orleans and thinking of Memphis and places like that. It was more thinking of really tiny towns where you're driving through and somebody comes out with a shotgun on their lawn and says you're not from around here.
What preconceived notions did you have of the South, and what were you expecting moving to Mississippi, one of the most southern and iconic southern states?
Well, Mississippi, I did not have a favorable impression because Mississippi often ranked low in what I would consider important areas of life. Economics, schooling for children, the degree of corporations that are headquartered here, economic development. Preconceived notions, I thought I would find a high degree of racial tension. I thought I would find a high degree of poverty and a lower standard of living.
Some preconceived idea of slow in regards to catching up in technology, catching up in to what would be considered norm for the most other northern parts of the world, northern parts of the United States.
What was your exposure to the South, and what were you shown of it?
Don't go there. that was pretty much our view of the South. It's an area where our guys are, because in our neighborhood we had like one white kid. Everybody else in the neighborhood was black, Latino, Indian, something along those lines. Right. And that's just not what thought of when you heard the South. Mm-hmm. Especially Mississippi. That was just one. Like if you're gonna go to the South, go to Georgia or something like that. But this was just one of those areas where he said you just don't go. Yeah, you don't go.
When you compare Mississippi to the bigger cities, Chicago, New York, even Europe, where racial lines just don't matter. In fact, I was having dinner last week with 40-something gentlemen from Canada who had been in Nashville for 3 days, and they even commented on how strange it was to be in an environment where there were people of different races, and race was a very big statement. They just don't see it. I don't see it in the cities. I think the degree of opportunity that people perceive in the more urbanized areas is larger than what the opportunities that young people in this part of the country perceive.
Have any of those preconceived ideas changed?
No, they're pretty well confirmed, with the exception of the northern part of Mississippi is probably more advanced, I would say, than what you see when you go farther south.
Would you support stereotypes of the South being slow or dumber or anything else in compared to like a Chicago or New York?
Oh, by no means.
No means?
I would say that they're slower in regards to their pace of life.
You do a lot of traveling to big major cities.
Yes.
What differences do you see in those cities and with cities in the South that you've been to?
By far, there's a much faster pace, and also, as I was saying, they're probably more advanced in regards to the technologies and things.
To me, the biggest difference is awareness of world events. The global stage is what I would call it. So in this small town where I grew up, in the relatively small town where we live now, when you talk to individuals, there's not a lot of appetite or understanding of what's going on outside the immediate day-to-day experience. So I find that people in the larger cities, and especially in the European countries, are very interested in the world around them. And it's a very isolated and narrow view when you talk to local people.
I hope you found this presentation interesting and weren't completely bored. Here's some outtakes. Hey. Hi, I'm Matthew Ward, and I got a pickle, I got a pickle, I got a pickle, hey, 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 hey. David and Lisa Ward were both born and raised in were born into small towns in northeast Oklahoma, and I'm talking like a robot. Shut up. Small towns in north. David and Lisa Ward, where they then moved to Texas together for 10 years. Texas together for 10 years. Texas together for 10 years. State University in Oklahoma State University in Texas, and how those living there affected their opinions from Oklahoma State University, where they were married, and then moved to Texas. They lived there for 10 years while having this guy that was awful. In northeast